Howdy. So here we are, it's Friday again, and it's 11:03, so I'm a little late because I was like, hey, what am I going to even talk about? So I thought we might talk a little bit about, so this is Untethered Fridays, as you may or may not know, which happens every Friday at 11, which is very exciting. Often I will have a guest on and we'll be talking about certain topics. This topic, I am by myself and I wanted to talk about some stuff about Buddhism because the Untethered Soul is, amazing, and it encompassing, it pretty much is applicable to every religion that, I'm not going to say legitimate, but any religion that holds truth. These are just facts that he puts before us. And that is how I felt about Buddhism when I first discovered Buddhism. Because it really is. It just makes sense, right? It's not a religion. It's a philosophy. La la la. So the major precepts of Buddhism are the Four Noble Truths. Like that's the numero one, who knows, thing about Buddhism, right? And that is suffering. A lot of people will say life is suffering. Like Buddha said, life is suffering. And in a way, yeah, he did. But sorry, my contact is doing something weird in my eye. But it's really about the existence of suffering, right? Because there's just suffering just is. It happens. It is in life. It is part of life. Suffering happens. The second noble truth is the arising of suffering. So it's like, where did the suffering come from? And this can be, maybe we'll do, so what I do sometimes in my journal is I'll pick like a noble truth and I'll go through it. Maybe every week we'll go through a noble truth. I don't know. But the second is a arising of suffering, and that has a lot to do with how suffering is arriving, right? There's three turnings of a wheel. Let's start over. Three turnings of the wheel in each noble truth. So the first one's suffering, right? And the three turnings are recognition, encouragement, and realization. So in the first noble truth, this is suffering, right? So you're looking inside and you're saying, I'm suffering. This, I can point to it. This is me suffering. This is something I'm suffering about. Encouragement, that part is the suffering should be understood. So you look at it, why am I suffering? No. Like, what is my suffering? What am I suffering from? I'm suffering from, is it physiological? Is it psychological? Is it physical? I'm suffering because when I'm overweight, it's harder for me to go up the stairs, and I get more out of breath, or my joints hurt a little, or whatever. But also that makes me feel bad about myself, right? Like I end up chastising myself because of it. And, then when I eat food, I hate myself, like all this stuff, right? When I first started writing about the noble truths in my journal, when I first started getting out of my depression, this was one of the first things that there were big aha moments for me. I sat and I for a week I listed the stuff I was suffering from, and I really just started and really kind of focused on my weight, because it was and it still is a big concern for me. And it was amazing when I sat and I thought about it, how many different ways I was suffering from it. Because it wasn't just like, oh, I feel bad about it, and like I can't run. It was like, well, I feel disgusted by myself, and I like, just physically I don't like the way that I look, but more so that I look in the mirror and I'm like, and then I look at the food that I eat and I feel bad about it, like I chastise myself for that. And then, you know, I yell at myself in my head for not doing the exercise that I should be doing. And then like you know, if I'm feeling like if my joint or something hurt, I'm like, that hurts. It's physical, you know, my stomach gets in the way. That's not nice. I don't like that. I don't like that. You know, there's a million different ways from which you suffer, you know what I mean? Like it also turned out that I stopped seeing my friends because of it, because I was ashamed of the way that I looked. And so I kind of, I isolated myself because of it, and that made me lonely. And it made me, it just, there's so much that if you sit and you meditate on it, you think like, oh, I'm just suffering because I'm overweight and I don't like myself because of it, and you know, physically I'm uncomfortable. But it's so much more than that, right? Like I was suffering financially because I was so ashamed of myself, like shame, right? I was so ashamed of myself. I didn't go outside. I mean, I didn't go see my friends. I didn't want people to see me. You know what I mean? It was messed up, but I didn't want people to see me. It was an excuse. I was using it as an excuse because I was depressed, not to go see people and not to be seen. And I got depressed, and that was a big part of it, or at least I don't know if the weight was a part of the depression. It was like a cycle. And this is the stuff I explored, right? Like it was part of my depression. It caused my depression, but it was also an excuse for me to stay where I was, right? Like it impacted me, my dreams and my goals in life, because my dream has always been to be an actor. My goal has always been to be an actor. I didn't feel like I could. I mean, I couldn't honestly approach that or sort of go after it, being the shape that I was in. And I hope that beeping doesn't keep going, because I think it's going to. But because of that, I stopped pursuing my goals and my dreams. So there was that. I was incredibly disappointed in myself, but it was also an excuse that I was using to not do that, because I was also scared. I was going to keep beeping. We're going to go turn that off. You know, but there's so much when you take a look. I spent a week writing about the ways in which I was suffering. And granted, yeah, you're like, oh, don't focus on the suffering, but you also have to understand it, right? You had like, so for me at least, it helped to put names to it, and that, yeah, it helped a lot. And then the following week, well, no, I think I did 3 weeks on that. I did first, this is suffering, right? The recognition. Then the second was suffering should be understood. So I looked deeply at my suffering. You know what I mean? Like, why is it there? You know, and that was when I came up with the whole cycle thing. Like, there's so much that goes into it. It's a web. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just suffer because you ate something and that's sad, and you feel upset about it. There's so much more that goes on. So it's good to take a look at the suffering, and it needs to be understood, right? The second noble truth is the arising of suffering. So what are you doing to contribute to the suffering, right? And so for me, first, okay, so what they talk about, like, what nutrients are you ingesting, right? And the first, most obvious one is edible food, right? So clearly I was eating the wrong foods and way too much of them. Even the healthy ones, I was eating too much of them. So, you know, I could list all of that off. But, you know, another thing about it is not just the food that I'm eating or not eating or eating too much of, but also mindfulness. If you're not eating mindfully, then you just shove the things in your face and they go down, and you don't feel satiated, because you're not really looking for physical satiation, right? So you're looking for something to help your soul. You're looking for that dopamine rush. But yeah, so it's not only what you're eating and how much you're eating, it's how you're eating it. Look at that. So if we focus on our food when we're eating it, we end up eating a lot less. Like, but really focus. You know, one of the things that I like to do, and a lot of people who, you know, practice mindful eating, is like just thinking about all the things that go into the food, right? Like even something as simple as like an apple, right? So this apple came off the tree, like the fruit of a tree, right? And what happened there? Well, the tree was originally a seed, grew up. What did that entail? Well, it needed the soil, it needed water, it needed sunlight. The apple had to be picked by somebody. But even within that, the soil had to have like earthworms in it and all these different nutrients in it. And then there was time. It took time for the tree to grow. And then, you know, every season that comes, you know, there's the apple season, when the apple comes to fruition, the fruit, if you will. And then someone has to pick it, and then someone has to put it in some sort of vessel that carries it to the store. And then you have to go in, and it has to be unpacked by people in the store. You go in, you buy it, you bring it home. And the money that you used to buy it, I mean, like you can go on and on and on. And if you're mindful about it, you end up like 5 bites and you're good. You know, just every time you take a bite, just like you're eating sunlight, you're eating water, you're eating soil, you're eating, I mean, what happened with the soil, right? I mean, the soil is as nutrient dense as it is because of thousands, millions of years of things dying and decaying, and like all, like whether they're trees or animals or whatever, you know, I mean, that's millions of years of stuff had to be there, billions even, so this tree could grow and you could eat the apple. Right, so that's mindful eating, and that's a big deal. Another nutrient they talk about is the nutrient of sense impressions, right? So these are the impressions that you get from your eyes, your nose, your ears, your mouth, your tongue, your body, touchy-feely stuff. You know, so like, what are you looking at? What, if you're looking at, for me, like for instance, I'll be looking at, I compare myself to other people, and that's a very common thing, right? Like I compare myself to other women, like walking down the street. I mean, I do it like all the time. This isn't something I have stopped doing. All the time. I look and it's like, oh, she looks so much better than me. You know, and that's not nice. Or you're looking at like a TV show or a billboard or whatever showing you what you're supposed to look like. It's not nice. I mean, yes, it's important to be aware that you should be healthy, but these things just make you feel bad about yourself. And then you watch like movies and moving away from even just like weight stuff. Like you watch, if you're watching something that makes you fearful or gives you negative energy, anger, violence, that comes in. That's an energy that you're taking in, and then you know you're metabolizing it and you put it back out into the world. So you have to be kind of careful. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I'll go around for days thinking about. I mean, and granted, this isn't because I really I'm into movies and TV and stuff like that. But if I watch something that's impactful, I'll be thinking about it for days. And then that's like also that kind of translates or more broadly, you know, who are the people you're hanging out with? Are they negative people? Are they toxic people? Are they people that are lifting you up and supporting you? Are they the people that you want to be like, right? They say hang out with people whose normal is what you aspire to. It's a good idea. It really is. So there's that, and then there's like the nutriment of like volition. Like, what do you want? What is your intention? You know, like some people feel like, okay, well, you know, like revenge, right? Like if you want to hurt somebody and you think that's going to make you feel better, not great, right? Like that's not the best intention to have. That's going to poison you. So there's that sort of stuff. That what are you ingesting? How are you contributing to your own suffering, right? And then the third noble truth then is the possibility of well-being. which is technically they call it the cessation of suffering. So now you have things you can do to stop your suffering, right? I like to call it the possibility of well-being, because it's just like, why don't we go towards the well-being and leave the suffering behind? I don't know. That's me. I'm not a Buddhist monk or any sort of expert, but that's how I like to think about it. You know, and it's your well-being, right? This is an important thing. And once you've kind of gone through and figured out what you're suffering from, and figured out why you're suffering, and figuring out what you're doing to add to that suffering, is I'm gonna look it up. It's about practicing what will stop your suffering, right? And in the end, the fourth noble truth is basically well-being, right? And that has a lot to do with what they call the Eightfold Noble Path, or the Noble Eightfold Path, or something like that. I'm going to look it up right now. The Noble Eightfold Path, and that includes right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right diligence, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And I think maybe we'll kind of talk about these things over the next several Fridays. But so that was kind of an overview of the Four Noble Truths, and we'll kind of go into it more next week with maybe we'll start with meditation, and then we'll talk about the Four Noble Truths. So we'll see. Or maybe it'll be something completely different. Who knows? Who knows? Who can predict the future? I certainly can't. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope that gave you a little something to think about, as far as like, let me take a closer look at what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it, and what I'm doing to contribute to it, and how I can contribute to stopping that and moving on to well-being. I hope that's a little food for thought. Maybe you could journal about it. I don't know. Personally, I love this book, The Heart of Buddha's Teaching. It's one of those books that I've started a billion times and never gotten all the way through. And it's like 20 years. I've had it for like 20 something years. I'll get to it one of these days. Anyway, that's what I'm going to tell you right now. I am grateful for that book. I am grateful for the insights that I get from the book. I'm grateful for the communion I can have with the higher being that I believe in. And I am grateful for all of you out there. So what I'm going to say is that, I don't know. It's been a weird, I'm doing a lot of development lately, and it's interesting. Anyway, so gratitude. I'm just going to remind you all. See, like, I feel like I never do the segue very well. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But you know, as you're going through, as you're kind of listing and figuring out what it is you're suffering from, why you're suffering from it, how you're contributing to it, I'm going to remind you, you can be grateful throughout all of that, because you're discovering it, right? You're on your way to well-being, so that no matter what, I'm just always going to remind you that you can always choose to have a grateful day.